details. The only detail we had in January was that the test would be administered the second week of March. So we were preparing for to administer the administration without a lot of information. The day we started administering the test, the state shared, not publicly, like the speculation that the test that had just begun getting administered was about to be called, acknowledged as a field test in the first year, which I suspect had an impact on the students' desire to take the test. Nevertheless, our students persevered and proceeded through that test. So the NJGPA test is a field test in 22, and we are awaiting further guidance on what this test looks like this year. What we've been told is that the field test status of NJGPA 22 has led to the removal of a testing requirement for the class of 22 graduation. Okay, so two other things are shared in this report as a part of our requirement. One of them is the status of youngsters who took DLM. DLM is Dynamic Learning Maps. The only youngsters who are eligible to take that test are students who have such significant needs that they can't otherwise actually participate in any capacity in NJSLA. So the population of youngsters who are administered DLM, very, very small. So I'm just going to ruin the surprise. There's no data because it's smaller than the subgroup that I can share and maintain student confidentiality. The second is ESL, so we administer the access test for ELS every year. That test is required for all students who qualify as English language learners, regardless of if they receive language services. So you may think, why wouldn't they receive language services if they qualify as language learners? Parents do have an option to refuse those services, but students are still required to take that test. All right, so as I go through, you've seen this format before. There's lots of data, lots of numbers, so I'm going to give you some highlights. This presentation will be shared online tomorrow, so if you have questions about particular data or numbers, I can certainly go through it with you. If you see two asterisks in any area of subgroup reporting, what that means is the population of students in that subgroup in that grade on that test is 10 or less, so we can't share it, all right, in order to maintain some confidentiality. So the test this year was the 6th year of this revised assessment instrument. I don't know if everyone considers it this way, but I do. I consider the NJSLA assessment a revision of PARC, kind of the same generation of testing, and the reason I make that distinction is when we moved from NJ-ASC to PARC, the language shifted from minimum proficiency assessment to a performance assessment. Right? It shifted from an opportunity for students to kind of regurgitate information that was shared with them through the curriculum into an application process. I would say that the expectations for performance and application of content when we moved to PARC and still in NJSLA is much higher than it once was in NJ-ASC. I don't have an issue with that. I know there were a lot of people that didn't particularly like that shift, but I don't think it's too much to ask our students to apply what they've learned every day. I think that's a fair expectation. Okay? It's important to note that this presentation looks different in a lot of ways than it has in the past. There's no annual comparison data because this test wasn't administered in 20 or 21. So where did we administer? We also had some other changes, which you may or may not recognize if you've seen this presentation in the past. So we still administered grades 3 through 9 ELA. Previous iterations of PARC required 10th graders and 11th graders to take this test. That wasn't the case this year, this past year. In addition, in the past, all students enrolled in Algebra 1, Geometry, and Algebra 2 were required to take the assessment, which wasn't the case this year either. It was a 9th grade test. So you're going to see numbers in Algebra 1, you're going to see numbers in Geometry. Algebra 2 numbers are so small, not recorded. Science was grades 5, 8, and 11. Okay. All right, this hasn't changed. There were 5 reporting categories, more or less for the purposes of whether, the question I often get is, did my child pass or not? If that's the question, then level 1, 2, and 3 would be classified as not having met the expectation. Levels 4 and 5 are. And the reason the state tiers them is so you can see on a progressive scale where students would fall. What it also does is it allows, which is probably the most important, which is the end of the presentation, is what do we do with the data when we get this information? What do we do with it? So these levels help us disaggregate the data and identify individual needs for students in comparison to the standards that are being evaluated. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about that at the end. So of course all of this ties into Goal 1. The reason I kind of talk about Goal 1 of the district's goals every year is in bold you'll see NJSLA. One So I've said this, you've heard this before, I apologize if it sounds like a recording. This is an important assessment. One of my big pet peeves about standardized testing is kind of the principal announcement, which I probably made once upon a time, about making sure you get a good night's sleep, and making sure you eat a good breakfast and all that stuff. I think that's a bunch of baloney. Students should do that every day. That's just healthy living, all right? So, this shouldn't be a day out of the ordinary for students, because it's out of the ordinary enough. It's a high stake, high pressure test, particularly for our youngest students. All right, but the NJSLA test is a piece of data that sits along all of these other pieces of information that impact student learning, which is always goal number one for our district. Okay? So, so this first couple charts are going to show us how we did in comparison to the state. So you'll see those levels of 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Again, levels 4 and 5. I'm going to show a composite percentage in a second for the grades. You'll notice again grades 3 through 9 are passing here. Pardon me, or assessed. So the quick version of ELA. Huge highlight was 9th grade. 9th grade ELA teachers and students really did a great job in how they performed in comparison to the state and, in fairness, comparison to the trend. We did note some needs for growth, in particularly grade 3 and grade 4. We're going to have that same pattern in math as well, which isn't really surprising because the last time these students in 3rd and 4th grade have never had an experience like this. And so how did we respond? I have this a lot at the end of our presentation, but I'll say it because you just heard it, it's fresh in your head. We've partnered, new math program was rolled out into this school year. Reveal Math has a far greater potential for students to engage purposefully with applying their math. When it's escaped my brain, that's how far it is. When Common Core came out, which is not called because New Jersey made it their own, it's New Jersey Student Learning Standards. When that came out, there was all this talk on social media and kind of in the press about new math. All right, so I was a math teacher. The math hasn't changed. What has changed is the approach to teaching math. All right, where when we were all students, there was a lot of memorization. Memorize this, memorize this, memorize this. I can't say there's not value to that. There is value to knowing facts. There is value to knowing information. But the push has been more about strategic thinking. It's a shift away from standard algorithm mathematics into application of thinking, application of patterns. Okay, so here's math testing. I already kind of gave you the heads up on geometry. The numbers are so small because we only had a handful of students take it. It was greater than 10, so it's reported. But just to kind of talk about who these students are, these are the students who are identified under the current math trajectory in 5th grade into an accelerated track here at Lincoln Roosevelt. Now, we've presented on this in the past, and we will again coming to the end of this school year. We're working to recalibrate that instructional sequence, which we've talked about a bunch in committee, to defer that choice by realigning the curriculum to better meet the standards, which makes a shift towards the typically progressing youngster to enroll into Algebra 1 in 8th grade. All right, so that's still 2 years away because what we're doing is we're aging that up with students. You can't jump through a curricular change without facing it with students. And in fairness, that shift started with the current 5th graders when they were in 3rd grade, when we had a curricular readjustment at the time that pushed multiplication introduction from February to October, which is where the standards call for it to be. Okay, so here's a breakdown of the same data by school. What you'll notice is this is categorized by students who are 4 or greater, so this is the percentage of youngsters who would be considered to have passed the spring NJSLA tests. By school, all right, and here's math, same thing. All right, if you take a careful look at this when we present it tomorrow, again, you will see what I already identified, that we have identified some needs to address in particularly grades 3 and 4, which we weren't surprised by. We focused on training, aligned with our new Reveal Math program. Nixon teachers and Mrs. Lynch talked about Leah Steiner, who is a trainer who's come in to work on the reading workshop program with our teachers. She's been doing some intensive training district-wide and has been a huge help with Ms. Bellardino. All right, same percentages disaggregated by different subgroups, subclusters. Again, I kind of talked to you about the double asterisk. Right? It symbolizes that the subgroup in that grade level is less than 10 youngsters. And math, same breakdown. All right, we use this information to really examine, are there trends that suggest we need to take other interventions? Now, I can tell you in the last 3 years, we've increased from grades K through 12 our ISL staff. That's essentially what we would have once called basic skills, or it's supplemental instruction. We've added 3.5 staff members and are looking to add an additional person to help support supplemental language arts instruction at the middle school next year. So we are taking steps to ensure additional supplemental support for youngsters whose data, this is a piece of that data, suggests they can use that support. All right, and here is science grades 5, 8, and 11. Side note, on grade 11, these youngsters took this test 2 or 3 weeks after they found out the graduation requirement was relieved of them from NJ GPA. Whether that matters or not, I don't know. It's just more information for you. All right, and this test was 4 categories, it was not 5. Same breakdown on subgroups. All right, I still use this slide, and I'm not sure we're required to anymore. I just think it's important because if you were following kind of the district's data trends for the last decade, 8 years ago, 9 years ago, our participation rate was not positive. In fact, we were on the brink of really getting ourselves in a pinch with the BoE and the expectations for participation rate. But I use this because what we've done is we've shifted the line of thinking and the language away from this being this unique moment where we need a good night's sleep and a good breakfast, and it's a day to really opportunity to participate in application experiences where we want students to really demonstrate what they know so we can gather data to do something. If students don't participate to the greatest extent they possibly can, the district is relieved of an opportunity to really get some great data, and that's unfair to the kids, unfair to the teachers, and really hinders our ability to gather as much data as possible. So I do think this is a highlight as well for us to celebrate, which is our students are really participating in the assessments as, I'm going to say required, but we all know just because you tell someone they're required to do something doesn't mean they're necessarily going to. But our students participate at a very high rate, and I think that's admirable. But that's also a credit to our parents, right? Because parents are encouraging students to do so and to do the very best. All right, so I kind of talked about DLM a little bit. There's no data because every subgroup in each grade level where students were administered was below that threshold. I'm particularly happy with this slide. Up top, students are disaggregated here in terms of total students. And the reason I did that was to try and get as few asterisks as possible. If I broke that down by grade level, there's no data on this slide. It's all asterisks, bless you. But you'll notice this column on the right is students who earned a 4 or better. So the Access for ELS test is scored differently. There are 6 tiers, which are really aligned to language proficiency and language fluency. So students are tested out of ESL services if they score a 4.5 or greater. The reason I categorize by 4 here is because while those are the thresholds, if it's an internal practice is if a student scores a 4.0, 4.1, 4.2, 4.3, or 4.4, we have a standards aligned assessment that we can administer through WIDA, which is the group that makes this assessment, outside of the testing window to determine if a student is eligible to move out of ESL service. What's that mean? It means the student stops being pulled from class for ESL and is more involved in their classroom in an immersion experience, which is what the research tells us is the best way to learn a language. And these numbers are very high. They're probably the highest we've had since I got language learners in the school. All right. But I think our language ESL teachers have done a really great job of not only partnering with teachers, but we have a training partner. She's actually coming tomorrow, Wednesday, and Thursday, coincidentally, to finish this year's training. It's a program we started 6 years ago called SIOP training, and it's an effort to try and ensure that all of our teachers are trained to work with and support English language learners. Well, when we started 6 years ago, we thought it was important. Well, it's become more important. Our ESL numbers have increased about 33% in the last calendar year. And so the need for our teachers to understand the needs of language learners, to understand how to help them in their classroom feel successful, have opportunities to learn, succeed, and grow is growing more and more important. And so in order to help support this effort, we've also worked on training all teachers. Most of our schools have about 75 to 85% teachers already trained, which is really exciting. The one difficult spot is the high school because they have 4 times as many teachers as any other school in the district. So pulling teachers out for training becomes a little bit more complex. So as we move into next year, we're actually going to have a separate training just for high school staff, and then the other cohort will be K to 8 new teachers because what ends up happening is the teachers who have gone through the training, they're good to go. All right, so we'll still work with new teachers at any one of these buildings. So we're going to shift our structure a little bit next year, really based on the needs of our staff as our community continues to change. All right, NJGPA, the numbers you can't see because they're up here. I apologize for the size. This is the state's template, but again, this will be shared. Roxbury did exceed the state's average in both assessments, but I tell you that preamble at the beginning because I don't think that the students were really given the best experience, and I'm not talking Roxbury, I'm talking everywhere, when they sat down that day and word spreads like wildfire. Our students still participated, but knowing that they were relieved of the responsibility that was associated with this, I do believe had an impact statewide, not just here in Roxbury, but I guess stay tuned for what's going to happen this year, because we are still waiting also. Okay, 3 years ago, right before COVID, in the administration of 19, the state introduced this new portal, which I think is really great. The school districts statewide are required to mail home ISRs, that's an individual student report, in all tests that the student was administered. And you have to read it, it was 2 sides, and quite frankly, the information was, I will say bare bones. That's my word, that's nobody else's. If you log into the parent portal, and this is a hyperlink that will take you to this screen, it was also hyperlinked in the letter I sent home, you can create a parent portal account where you can get much more information about your youngster's performance. And so, before I go into that next slide, I'm gonna read you through the next slide, because there's a lot on there. And by the way, that's the pared back version that the supervisor added to. One of the things that we get that, I know I'm gonna sound like, once again, that I like what they're doing with it, and I do. When we had NJ Ask, I was a principal under NJ Ask, and the information was almost Zippo. The accountability was high for schools, but the information, the opportunity to do something with the data was almost zero. So what changed when PARC came in and subsequently has continued to evolve with NJSLA is the data that the school districts get. So what do we get? What's that data look like? So as soon as the tests are reported, I download all of the data and share it with the administration, and it includes the most important result packet that I think, and what are some of the things we've done? We've increased the training for staff on DOK levels, that's depth of knowledge. And I highlight that out of this list because of 2 reasons. One, you've already heard from the Nixon teachers and students about what we've done with Reveal Math as a new math program, which offers far greater opportunity for students to apply concepts than our previous program. It provides teachers with the resources and materials they need to do so. And largely the feedback from teachers has been very positive thus far. The second thing that I'm going to skip past because you heard from them was the training that we've done with Leah Steiner and Teachers College to really enhance how we are offering teachers opportunities to get trained in reading and writing workshops. All right, so back to DOK. So depth of knowledge. So we've partnered with Eric Francis. He's an author who is one of the leading researchers on depth of knowledge to not only work directly with myself and the supervisors on evaluating how we utilize depth of knowledge to determine how we assess students. Right? Well, the depth of knowledge examples, I'm going to give you a very easy math example. Like the DOK 1 would be 7 times 6, right? Straight regurgitation, right? Depth of knowledge 2 would be the very typical, right? If I had 7 hamburgers and I had 7 hamburger packages and there's 6 buns in a package, right? When we turn it into an application process, we need to kind of pull information out. A different scenario, DOK 3, would be something where students are using their ability to demonstrate knowledge through a novel experience. Something more like this. If I had 7 packages of if 6 buns came in I'm making it up on the fly. If 6 buns came in a package of hamburger rolls and I had 50 guests, how many different ways could I purchase hamburger buns to satisfy those guests, right? And give 3 or 4 different examples. And so there are wrong answers, but there's lots of right answers. But it's much more contingent on a student's ability to demonstrate their thinking. So what are they going to do? They're going to rely on life experience. They're going to rely on critical skills to explain their work. That shift in how we utilize those assessment opportunities will directly align to, although it's not the intention, it's much more usable fashion for what we teach, to these tests, right? So if you ask any of the teachers, they have never, nor will they ever hear me say prepare for the test. It's just disingenuous, right? It's not fair to the kids, it's not fair to the teachers, and quite frankly, it's just not a good use of our time. High quality instruction and opportunities to demonstrate learning every single day will align to better results. Right? It'll align to the data that we collect each day. Right? So while there's lots of measures we're taking, those are some of the highlights for me. One of the other things that we've really done K through 12 is really enhance classroom libraries, allow students opportunities to engage in choice reading. I think last year we shared data either in the superintendent's report or in the ed committee report, probably around February or March, which is right around the halfway mark, tracking readership and checkouts. I don't even know what the appropriate way to say this is. The number of books checked out from media centers. And we saw more than double the number of books checked out in 2019, 2020. I use that because that was the window pre-COVID. To last year, we saw more than double the number of books being checked out in media centers. What's that tell us? It tells us kids are reading more. That's a good thing, right? If our choices are reading something or reading nothing, I'm going to choose reading something. And so the push to train students to identify selections that they're of high interest, with that they can feel confident and comfortable reading, will align to them becoming lifelong learners, lifelong lovers of reading, which I think is our real goal. And so while all of these things are important, I'm going to focus here on the top two bold bullets and then the bottom ones for the sake of time. I can keep talking about this, and I know that's everyone's favorite thing I read. I really just want to brag about the supervisor's efforts to break down the data and how they share that with the staff. So they help staff make student profiles, they help identify standards where we're not assessing the way we would like to. They help them revise curriculum, they help them identify areas and specific units at every grade level where we need to have a stronger focus on specific standards within the structure of curriculum framework. They also then use that data to partner with teachers to revise curriculum where it's necessary, right? They don't just say, well, too bad, we taught it, because that's not the way it works. And I can reflect, when I was a teacher, there were probably days I left the classroom, like, that was the best lesson I ever taught. But didn't stop to actually consider if the students learned, right? There's a difference there between the teacher teaching and the student learning. We need both to happen. And so we have used, the supervisors have worked directly with the teachers to break that data apart to have those conversations, right? And also to balance out the student's perception. Right? One of the things we don't talk about a lot here, but it's probably in this presentation 2 or 3 different times, is gathering of student perception on their experience. The teachers might think we're connecting to everyday life. The students are learning it. But if we ask the students, they're like, I don't know how that applies to my life. Why is that important? Well, there's a difference in perception. I'm not saying one group is right or one group is wrong. But if the perception is different, that's something a question we need to ask. Why is that different? And how can we close that gap a little bit? All right? But more importantly than all this, the data is important. I don't want to downplay the importance of standardized testing, otherwise benchmark testing. It is important. It is. But I always bring it back to, what do we value, right? So when people bring up conversations about published rankings and programs and things like that, it's always just a little tiny piece of the conversation, right? The metrics that those rankings and programs are measured on is a very, very small part of what comprehensive school districts are responsible for. And so, not to belabor the point, but when we evaluate our school district and we go back to goal 1, we look at the entirety of our program. What do we offer students and what is their learning experience? And that really comes down to these questions. I like the last one the best. It's not something I thought of. It's something I've borrowed from somebody who said it once upon a time. It's a difficult question to wrangle with, and I think I would struggle with this when I was a teacher. If students had to buy a ticket to come, would they? I sure hope they say yes, but I'm pretty confident they wouldn't every day, all day. Well, how do we shift that? How do we help make it more exciting to them? I had a great conversation with a teacher today during a post-observation conference focused specifically on student relationships. And this teacher has such a great relationship with the students, he could have done anything with them in terms of teaching his content, and they would have gone with him. And without exposing too many secrets there, it was a content area where students aren't typically jumping through the door to be like, I can't wait to learn this. But his relationship with the students was so impactful that there was a really meaningful experience going on, and I think that's really important. All right? And it all ties back to this, right? Portrait of a Graduate is something our district established 5 years ago. This is its 5th year. As these are the competencies we want our students to progress in and learn during their time upon enrollment. Sometimes it's kindergarten, sometimes it's later, and through the time they leave our district, whether that's graduation or going elsewhere, for moving or whatever. So these are the skills we want them to learn. The content matters, right? This is not to downplay the importance of learning, right? The things we teach, the standards we are required to instruct do matter. But what will students do with that in their life? How will they take that to contribute to society? These are also really important questions, and I would say more important. Anyhow, I apologize if that's too quick or too long, I don't know which it was. But I think this is important information, but I think putting it in the perspective of the entirety of what we offer from a curriculum and instruction program does matter. And so I guess I'll throw this out there as a teaser. I'm gonna bring some of the team I work with, the supervisors, back in the late winter, early spring to give a revision of some curricular highlights. And we did that maybe 2019. That presentation was 54 minutes. I have promised the superintendent it will be less this time. 53 minutes, saddle up. And 55 seconds. I'm getting my money's worth. All right. Any questions?
Okay, well, thank you very much, Dr. Snyder.
I don't want to have a general comment. I just want to applaud the district as a parent and as a board member for when we take and break down this data 9 times out of 10, if not 9 times out of 100, we're looking at where the gaps are and where our students are that we need to pick up, which we should. But I know Dr. Snyder briefly alluded to it. It's also important to track those kids that can do more, and that the district is looking at those kids who can go above where their current grade level is without making a big project. And I know you mentioned with the math, tracking kids towards when they get to high school, and I just want to say that's important too, and I appreciate that it's being taken into consideration. We always look at the gaps, but now it's look at those kids and yourself as well. So I know you've been to them, but I just want to make a point of it because I like hearing it.
Well, and now I'm not going to pass up the opportunity to add. Sorry, now I'm going to keep going. So one of the things to that point is a couple of years ago, we restructured G&T K to 6 to be something that was afforded to every student. I want to commend, so as COVID came, we started to recapture that time as an opportunity to fill gaps, right? That was the language that was out there, and it was reality. Students there were gaps in learning, there were gaps in understanding that we needed to make a concerted effort to start to fill. So those times during the day, while we could have done other things, we reprioritized. So going into this year, we've come out of that. I can tell you that the elementary principals, so Mr. Argenziano likes to vacillate between Lincoln Roosevelt being elementary and middle school. I think that's based on convenience. Mr. Miller, you agree with that? Okay. So one of the things that Lincoln Roosevelt has done is Dr. Ziegler and Mr. Argenziano have started to investigate a partnership where we can take what we do with senior options and allow students to engage in passion projects during LAP, which is what they call here, PEAK, which is what we have at K to 4. And so we're going to really start to engage more in an opportunity for students to do small individual and group passion project experiences to explore their personal interests that go beyond our curriculum. Right? And it's interesting because Renzulli, who's the partner we're looking to work with, is one of the leading researchers in gifted instruction, often is utilized and misquoted in terms of identifying twice exceptional students, which is the language that frequently is connected with G&T. Except when I explain to them our vision for why can't every student have an opportunity to do something cool, to do something of high interest, to do something. Now, what you and I might do looks different. Maybe you want to write a song. Well, that's not your typical G&T kid, right? Maybe I want to do something to enhance the recess area because that's an important part of my day, or the lunch line, things like that. Like, why can't, if a student wanted to investigate a better process, like there's a lot of learning there, right? There's a lot of demonstration of understanding. So we're going to continue to work on those opportunities for students too, and I can say that Lincoln Roosevelt's really leading the way with that investigation. Sorry, I couldn't pass up the opportunity. Okay. And yes, the coffee helps keep the excitement high.
Any other questions or comments? Oh, Leo?
Yes, thank you, Dr. Site. Your presentation was too short, though.
I paid Leo to say that.
The most important thing, I think, is that our administration, supervisors, teachers, using this data to look for where the weak points are, and by weak point, I mean as you say, where anybody can do better, even if they're doing well, if they can do better. And I think the math that was introduced this fall, right? The thing with the math, the 2 programs, depending on the child's
reveal math and number ones.
abilities and all. So, in essence, you anticipated some of these results that are now officially released.
I would love to say yes. That would sound great that we anticipated that. What we recognized was the program we were using, while the math itself was still accurate, right, and what we wanted to teach. The program, as a part of our 5-year curriculum plan, which you'll hear more about the newest version coming out this spring because we're up. called for us to re-examine our current math program last year. And so what we found was teachers universally were telling us that it was hard to run instructional centers, particularly K-5, because the resources and materials weren't aligned directly with the standards in the text insofar as their ability to take curricular experiences and create intervention-based centers. So that was one of the keys that the teachers and Mrs. Kelly, who's the supervisor, looked at when they examined new program potentials. That was why we identified Reveal Math and Number Worlds, because it filled that instructional gap, which we knew was something we needed to address.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Slade.
Sure.
Okay, do we have any correspondence?
No correspondence.
Okay. Delaney, student representatives comment.
Okay, so on Sunday, October 30th, 2022, the Roxbury Marching Girls performed their 2022 competitive show, Toxic, for the final time in TCNG Stadium, as well as winning awards from the best music and best visual in their class. So congratulations to them. They got a really nice award too. It's been in the office. Maybe take a picture with it, post it on Milligram or something like
It's
that.
on the gram.
It's on there? Alright, so now grades are open to parents in Genesis starting tomorrow, and the RHS Band Fall Chamber Recital is also tomorrow. On the 17th, the National Honor Society will be having its induction. I believe it starts at 7 o'clock, so just so you guys know. Our winter sports are starting up, so take a look at the Roxbury Athletics Instagram. They've been posting religiously every day, every sport, keeping up with stats, and they did a really good job with the winter sports. I was able to be part of the field hockey team, and help them edit and make pictures too, so we've been busting out stuff on there. And then the Rock Spawn theme was officially announced, and it's disco, and the event is on March 10th. So now for my experience part. On November 4th, a man posed a threat on synagogues in New Jersey as an act of anti-Semitism, and the FBI was involved. A few days later, they were able to find the 18-year-old that said this threat. We do have synagogues around us, one about 2 miles from our high school, and it's my job to obviously notify the board, and many of our Jewish students and staff were nervous about it, and I don't know if the board knew about this, but it would have been nice if it was addressed somehow in schools. Next time I will be sure to get it to you guys sooner. It was just that I wanted to make sure that the threat was real, and then the FBI did come out and say it was, but they found the guy too. But yeah, just for the new notice, it would be a great addition to just kind of make parents aware of it too, obviously, because there are synagogues, churches, and other religious places like that close to our school. And that's it for me.
Thank you, Delaney. Okay, Dr. Radley, continue.
So good evening. First I'd like to congratulate our new board members. As you know, the transition occurs in January when they will be sworn in during our reorganization meeting. The unofficial results also indicate that Carol Shenick voted in on the board, so unofficially, congratulations, Carol. Traditionally, we hold an orientation meeting in December to support new members. This is not something that's required. It's just a Roxbury tradition. And we look to support our new members in fulfilling their requirements to obtain fingerprints and background checks, learn more about the board and district goals, discuss committee responsibilities and interests, etc. I'd also like to extend my gratitude to Michelle Danielson and Dan Massey for their work while serving on the board. Among Michelle's many contributions, the most outstanding was her ability to work with the RAA and REA leadership and settle their contracts prior to their expiration. As far as we could research, it was the first in Roxbury history, and it was accomplished during a COVID year. We are certainly hoping to do it again as we're in the middle of negotiations. And as for Dan, his work on policy and governance, as well as the education committee, speaks to his dedication. Of course, you know he's a band dad and does a lot of work there as well. Unfortunately, Dan could not be here tonight as his mother passed away yesterday. We do send him our sympathies, and we'll definitely keep him and his family in our thoughts and prayers. There's always so much going on in this district that a colleague shared that others have a hard time keeping up with us. To illustrate this fact, in my upcoming newsletter, I will be highlighting how many districts have reached out and have visited our district to observe everything from our fitness program to vying for a seat at our upcoming Artists in Residence program with Mr. Kwame Alexander. Just so you're aware, as I've heard that there are some concerns expressed over this opportunity for our students, Mr. Alexander will be working with 6th grade levels for 3 days. He will also be facilitating a professional development opportunity for our staff. As a popular and current author of young adults, several other districts have reached out inquiring if they could also have staff members attend. At this point, we have 25 individuals attending from 6 other districts. To attend, these districts are paying $350 for each staff member attending this unique and exciting event. That's $8,750 that will be contributed to paying for this exceptional opportunity for our students and staff. I have cleared my schedule as much as possible and plan to be present as well, because I know Dr. Seid will also be there. With the many things that need to be done, it is important to take a moment and take stock of all the ways that we support our students' academic and social emotional growth. What better way to do this than to gather administrators and teachers to discuss and document in an application for School of Character. I have been anxious for Roxbury to be awarded this distinction for a number of years, but COVID hit, and I kind of put things at a stop for a while when we were figuring out other things. Nonetheless, our staff persevered, and each building in the district as a whole was recognized for their promising practices last year. That bodes well for us for the School of Character recognition, although I've heard that sometimes they ask for multiple revisions. Nonetheless, I'm going to keep faith on this because I know that regardless, it is deserved by this district. I will be sharing more about each of the buildings and their School of Character applications in my upcoming newsletter. But I want to congratulate all of the administrators and educators who took the time to highlight their schools. I know it was a lot of work and it is sincerely appreciated. As evidence of the character we promote in this district, the shout out goes to Valeria Cerdas, who is a 6th grade student who has been helping our new students who have come to us from other countries feel at home by aiding Dr. Zigar in giving tours and answering questions. According to Dr. Zigar, Valeria's help has been indispensable in putting our new students at ease and helping with their transitions. Way to go, Valeria. I'd also like to extend congratulations to 5 seniors, we haven't had this many in a while, who have signed letters of intent, committing to continue their athletic career at institutions of higher learning. They are as follows. Kendall
Basil.
Thank you, Basil, who will attend Rider University to play softball. Justin Ford, who will attend Seton Hall University to play baseball. Gabrielle Rudenberg, who will play soccer for William and Mary University. Luke Stanich, who will wrestle for Lehigh University. And Victoria Latino, who will play volleyball for Merrimack College in the fall. If you did not already read it, I encourage you to read Ann Rhodes' press release where she shares the coaching questions on these talented athletes. And thank you so much, Ann, for putting all this great information out. I also want to give a shout out to our teachers and students for a hilarious performance of The Play That Goes Wrong. Luckily, Mr. Hatchie had warned me that I would see things happening on stage and not to worry because everyone was safe. The line delivery, character portrayal, the comedic timing, the choreography of actions was superb. Another success for the Roxbury Theater. And lastly, a sincere shout out to all of our principals, staff, and veterans who joined us to make Veterans Day memorable, as we honored those who served. I was fortunate to see our very own Mr. Leo Coakley speak at our extremely respectful, polite, and engaged middle schoolers who asked questions such as, what was your most difficult training exercise in the Air Force? Do you still keep in touch with your military friends? Why did you select that branch of service? What other examples of jobs are there in the Air Force? Mr. Coakley answered all of their questions and left the students with the message that we hope to never have to use our military force, but we always need to be prepared to serve and defend our country. Mr. Argenziano was so excited about the impact of his Veterans Day celebration that he called me over the weekend to share that, the banners that our students signed with messages of what freedom means to them made it to Quantico Marine Base of Virginia, and the other one made it to the Vietnam Wall in D.C. Oh, it's amazing. You'll see pictures in my upcoming newsletter. The Roxbury School District continues to make a positive difference that reaches distances. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, my remarks will be brief tonight, as I believe Dr. Radlich's report was very thorough. I wanted to thank the board members, Ms. Dan, Michelle, Ann, Leo, and I think, Brian, are you at the New Jersey workshop? You didn't go to the convention? Okay.
No, I had it in my,
Okay, oh, that's right, yes, okay, so Dan, Michelle, and Leo, I didn't see Brian there, but I thought you were going to go. Who attended the New Jersey School Board's workshop on October 24th to the 26th. The board members and administrators who attended this used the opportunity to obtain training, and we attended a variety of seminars and training sessions, including those on live streaming, electric buses, ethics, special education, among others. The best presentation we saw, though, was Dr. Sipes and Frank Capovel's presentation on our SDF lab, in which we learned a lot more than we already knew about the SDF lab, which I didn't think possible. And one thing that really impressed me, that it really impacts some of the students in different ways, like they develop leadership skills, and actually were protective of their fellow students, and were making sure they got adequate breaks and lunches and so on, so I found that really interesting. The audience was very interested, and they had a lot of questions for Dr. Sipe and Mr. Capovel after the presentation, so I wasn't even able to say hello. I was there, but I wasn't even able to say hello. They were so busy speaking with board members from other districts. The convention is always a great way to network with other groups and to exchange ideas. And as the board may recall, we had not completed our board retreat. And although district goals have been set, we needed to complete 7 board goals. We had set a date of November 21st, which would be next Monday, to complete the board retreat, and also to receive ethics training from our attorney, and to receive training from our New Jersey School Board's representative, Charlene Peterson. I believe the notice for the November 21st retreat has already gone out, but it will be rescheduled so that the newly constituted board will be able to receive the training. We do need 7 out of the 10 board members to attend that training in January, it'll probably be, in order to receive credit though. And I will advise the new date, as our attorney and Charlene have to coordinate their schedules. We don't know what the date is now, but they will be conducting that training at that time. We expect it to be sometime in January after reorganization. I am told that the delay in training will not affect our master board status, as we have to earn so many credits, so that was my concern. But we can now cancel the November 21st date, so we don't have to go next Monday, but it will be in January. And since the results of the election are still unofficial, I will address this at the next meeting, which will be the last meeting before reorganization. And I join in the remarks Loretta made this evening. On behalf of the board, I would like to express our sincere condolences to Dan Massey on the loss of his mother. And I wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving. And that concludes my report.
Can I add something real quick?
Excuse
I
me.
just don't want to forget rave reviews from multiple town boards that came out and reached out to me about your presentation, Mr. Capovel, and I don't want to forget. So, literally multiple, so I just want to let you know.
Oh, thank you, Tom.
Oh, sorry.
No, that's fine. That's
Lots of
great.
people like it.
Word of mouth, that's great. Okay, a business administrator's report.
You elected board members, can't wait to work with you guys coming in January. The only thing I have really is, we're going out to bid on our roof replacements. It's Franklin partial, Kennedy partial, and high school partial. The bid was advertised on November 7th. We'll be opening the bid on December 2nd, so we'll be on our next, our December board meeting for vote. There was the proposed cost is slightly higher than, when we went out in February and got a proposal from the architect, and that's because back in February, we were getting, numbers of $35 a square foot, and right now it's at $45 a square foot, so it is what it is. But yeah, that will be on our December board meeting. That's really all I have, because I don't want to steal my thunder, because I have to report on facilities.
I was gonna say that, yeah, you're doing the report on facilities, okay. All right, moving on to the minutes of the regular meeting of October 17th. Do I have a motion? Heather, second? Ronnie? Okay, any changes or comments on minutes? Okay, roll call.
Did you have something?
Oh, I'm sorry, I have to do the education report, so. Yes, on the regular minutes,
On the regular meeting.
on page 2, the resolution to meet an executive session should include the reasons for going to executive session. I'm sorry. The motion on going to executive session that I made should include the reasons for executive session as they were in the agenda. So I'm asking that the minutes be updated to include that.
Okay.
And with that, I will move the minutes of the meeting.
Oh, okay, so Heather had to do mine.
Yeah.
Okay, so Leo's doing the minutes and Ryan, do you second? All right, any other comments or changes? Okay, roll call.
Mr. Botero?
Yes.
Mrs. Champagne?
Yes.
Mr. Coble?
Yes.
Mrs. Danielson? Ms. Shennick?
Yes.
And Mr. Staples?
Yes.
Okay, moving on to the minutes of the executive session of October 17th. Do I have a motion for that? Okay, Heather. Michelle? Okay, any changes or comments? Okay, roll call.
Mr. Botero? Mrs. Champagne?
Yes.
Mr. Coble?
Yes.
Mrs. Danielson?
Yes.
Ms. Shennick?
Yes.
And Mr. Staples?
Yes.
Passed.
Okay. Now moving on to committee reports. Can I have the Community Relations Shared Services Committee report?
Okay, since our last meeting, Susan Casino from class of 79 and Captain Comer from class of 76. I want to recognize the distinguished alumni Hall of Fame. It was a great evening, and I think they found their place, when they were honored and recognized with these academic awards, and so much fun. They had some great advice and great stories, and at the end of their presentations, they gave their best advice to the students, so I thought that was really good. The nominations for 2023 are now being accepted, on the Roxbury BoE website under distinguished alumni. So we'll be, the requirements are there, so again, I think the students got a lot out of it to see that, what they're learning here really is good for the world, what they're coming up with next. Our next meeting will be Tuesday, December 6th at 6 p.m. Via Google Meet.
Okay, thank you. Okay, who'd like to do the education? Leo?
Yeah, Mr. Bocchino asked that I do the education. I'm gonna give you some highlights. The meeting lasted an hour, so I just want to stay for an hour to hear everything, which is, there were 3 major highlights. One is, Mr. Facina, I'm trying to say his name wrong, presented to the committee about a slight change in how the math sequence is going to go in coming years. And this incorporates some innovative ideas about designing the math pathways, depending upon whether the student is pursuing a science track, a math and science track, or more of a liberal arts track, or depending on where their interests lie and where they want to go. And one of the key points that was brought out is, for example, there may be kids going into science in biology or medicine, and they need certain math things like like statistics, understanding data and data analysis, but they don't need calculus necessarily, or some of the other math. And this realignment will give more flexibility to meet the needs of the students. So I think this is a big positive, so as opposed to, you know, all math-oriented students leading to calculus, that's not necessary. So I think this is gonna be great for our students. Dr. Seib shared that Mrs. Bellardino is a committee to evaluate potential elementary social studies supplemental materials. So the committee's gathered, and I think this is good, that we have committees in our, within our school community, you know, looking at things, and they're gonna share this with all the elementary teachers to get feedback. And then once the program's identified, they're gonna make a presentation at our meeting. So you'll hear about that, similar to what we heard about with the math programs before. You'll hear about that coming up. And the third thing is, 4 of our staff, Dr. Seib, Mr. Mon, Dr. Godfrey, and Mr. Blau, visited the Warren County Community College with some staff from Jefferson Township Schools to learn about their drone program. And as somebody whose name I won't mention said going in, they thought, well, we've got it all here. What are they gonna show us? And came out blown away with what they saw in this other facility. And they've got some new ideas. So expect that our programs are gonna get better than, you know, they're great, they're gonna get better. So thank you to the staff for making that journey outside to see what was going on. And those are the highlights. And there's many other things were discussed, some of which you heard already, and some of which are coming up at future board meetings.
Well, thank you, Leo. Okay, Mr. Montanaro will give us the facilities report because, Mrs. Calucci is in Italy, but I was very impressed that she attended the facilities meeting, you know, via Google Meet, during her vacation. I was shocked to see her there, actually.
All right, so, let's see. There was a, there was a mold claim in Jefferson that came back. There was more mold found out in the outside area than there was in the classroom, so that was good enough. Mr. Mason actually presented on the high school scoreboard, you know, he is attempting, to get a new scoreboard without us having to pay for it, so that's, I'm always happy about that, but we are, you know, in talks, about, you know, advertising being on the scoreboard. So Mr. Mason thinks he has, a corporation that may wanna, donate, but, you know, there's something that we're gonna have to discuss regarding the advertising. Again, roof replacements, I gave you that, $35 a square foot, now it's at around $45 a square foot. Fuel pump upgrade is complete, and, there was a change order on last board meeting for, I think, something around $22,000. I did say we were gonna push on that, we did get $5,000 back, and the final bill hasn't come in. Just remember the fuel pump, we share that cost with the township, so it's a 50-50 split. So it was costing us $158,000, and I think, yeah, we'll get $80,000 from the township once it's complete. And that's pretty much all we discussed. We did talk about the high school garden, looks fantastic, Mr. Miller. The garden, awesome. And Kathy talked about an update with Sustainable Jersey for Schools. That's all I'm giving, I have no details for that, just a little. And that's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Okay, finance, met the same day, on November 8th, and we talked about, local food for schools grant, Department of Agriculture, $9,771. And this grant opportunity allows New Jersey schools participating in the National School Lunch and School Breakfast Program. And, we talked about, our budget. It's in the preliminary stages, and information is provided to principals and directors, and they're starting to our business administrator started to meet with those people and, gather information. We have a preliminary budget, meeting schedule. We also talked about the Kwame Alexander visit, which is $30,000, but we sold, almost $10,000 in tickets to other districts to share that expense. We talked about special education out-of-district placements. There has been an increase in those, which will affect the budget, the tuition budget, and also the transportation budget. We don't have those exact numbers yet. And the special education enrollment numbers are going up. And in 21-22, we're 536, and 22-23 was 566, so they are increasing as well. We also talked about an electric bus update, and the state actually there's only a handful of districts in the state that are doing this, and each bus is $380,000. And in order to do this and get involved in the grant program with the state, you have to trade in clean diesels. We don't at this time have the infrastructure to support this, and it seems like there's a lot of changes going on with in the industry and in the technology. And also, Ann Colucci had added that she had gone to a seminar on this in Atlantic City, and electric buses can't even be used for field trips. So there is still a lot of work to do before it seems like more school districts will be going to electric buses. And I think that's probably it. The rest of what we discussed is on the finance agenda. And our next meeting is what, the Tuesday before our next meeting, which is December 12th. Our next regular meeting is December 12th, so it's 264, yes. Okay, December 6th. Okay, and let's see. Personnel, Kathy's not here this evening. She had an emergency. You want to do the report?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, the personnel committee, we met on November 9th. In person, and that's resolution 2020, that is on the agenda on Tuesday, 11 to 19. And our next committee meeting is December 7th. In person, time to be determined.
Okay. Now, policies, governance, I don't know, Dan is not here this evening. I don't know whether there was a meeting.
We did. There was no meeting. We're waiting for the next packet of updates from Strauss Esme, so I hope that we get them in the next day or so that we have a meeting before the next board meeting, but we generally need 10 days to turn it around so we can make revisions, read them, and discuss them.
Right. Okay, thank you. Leo, negotiations?
Yes, I'm happy to report we have a meeting scheduled with all three of our unions, and we've already had one meeting with the Administrators Association.
Okay. And Kathy, sustainability?
Yes, the Roxbury, district was recognized at the New Jersey School Board Convention, again, for all 7 schools in the district. Reaching bronze status. Shout out to Ann Rhodes for that and all the work that she has done. And also, as our president mentioned, there is also an ongoing punch list of things we're following up on from the EDF fellow that was here over the summer, working to continue trying to identify ways that we can be greener and more energy efficient. We are working with JCP&L and several other organizations on an energy audit to determine where we can continue to lessen the cost and effect of our impact on the environment. And that's all I have.
Okay, we're now at the public comments on action items, which are the agenda items. And as everybody is aware, we do welcome comments, and we do limit the time for the comments to 3 minutes. And so we will, I guess Kathy will be advising you when there are 30 seconds remaining, and so would ask you to wrap up your comments at that time. And you cannot give your time to another person, and I believe we have 1 slip on agenda items, and if you have any comments on non-agenda items, you could submit slips for those as well. And please provide your Name and address before you speak for the record.
Mr. Miller.
So the agenda items I'm gonna talk about are the grants that we received through Restorative Justice, grant with King University and the Special Olympics grant that we use for the bowling program that we had. Bowling's become a sport, and it's a unified sport at Roxbury High School, where we utilize the money that we get from Special Olympics for ancillary items for the kids, equipment that we may need, so we're excited about that grant. And Restorative Practices grant is gonna help us do a variety of things. We were able to use it last year for some literature, we use it for some furniture. We're looking to kind of reimagine the ISS room, trying to do some work in there, so we use that money for that. We're also planning on using that on 2 advisors, so they can kind of spearhead the process with the grant and a more genuine relationship amongst the teachers. And this way, when they go to sell it to our staff, it's coming from the teachers, not necessarily the members of the administration, so it's gonna be easier for our staff to buy in if it's proposed from them. Some other things I just wanted to mention: congratulations, our boys soccer team won sectional championship. That's right, we had a great fall. Our sports teams were competitive throughout the season. The play was fantastic, as Dr. Radlick said. I was belly chuckling the whole time. It was phenomenal. We kind of changed the format. We do our faculty meetings, so we have different reports. And at last Monday's faculty meeting, 2 of our guidance counselors, the pregnant twins, Ms. Barbolini and Ms. Belfiore, both presented on behalf of the guidance department. They did a fantastic job. I wasn't there because I was driving down to North Carolina, but I heard they did awesome. School character, Dr. Radlick mentioned that as well. A lot of credit to Melissa Hall. She spearheaded that for the high school. We had a fantastic team that really did a significant amount of work to get that application ready, so I cannot, commend them enough. Veterans Day. Veterans Day, on behalf of the high school, we shared a video thanking our veterans, also to celebrate the 247th birthday of the United States Marine Corps. And I wanted to include Leo in our presentation. However, Leo was a little late getting back to me. So, Leo, happy Veterans Day. Thank you for your service. A little quicker next time, Leo. And I'd like to just congratulate the Nixon kids for presenting all the fantastic things they're doing. I've been doing a lot of observations. Like, there are some awesome things going on in the classroom. I'm really proud of what our teachers are doing, and then hear from the kids, from the mouth of babes, to what's going on in the elementary levels. I think it's fantastic, so thank you.
No other comments, right? Okay, moving on to the action items. Who would like to move the finance resolutions? Okay.
Finance resolutions 1 through 20.
Okay, any comments, questions? Okay, roll call.
Mr. Botero.
Yes, all in 5.
Mrs. Champagne.
Yes.
Mr. Coker.
Yes.
Mrs. Danielson.
Yes.
Ms. Shinick.
On the bills list, I'll recuse on PO 23-2174, 22-2288, 23-2273. Yes on all the other, POs on the bills list, and yes on all the rest of the resolutions.
Mr. Staples.
Yes.
Passes.
Okay. Who would like to move the education resolution? Heather.
I would like to move education resolutions 1 through 6.
Okay, have a second?
Second.
Oh,
Oh,
okay.
Brian.
Okay, Brian, okay. Any comments or questions? Okay, roll call.
Mr. Botero.
Yes, all in 5.
Mrs. Champagne.
Yes.
Mr. Coker.
Yes.
Mrs. Danielson.
Yes.
Ms. Shinick.
And one recusal on number 4, it is on subpart 15, yes and all the rest.
And Mr. Staples.
Yes.
That passes.
Sorry.
Okay.
My computer has not internet, so I wanted to make sure I read it right
Okay, Leo, would you like to move the negotiations resolution?
Yes, we have one resolution under negotiations. I move that resolution number 1.
Okay, second? Okay, any discussion? Okay, roll call.
Mr. Botero.
Yes.
Mrs. Champagne?
Yes.
Mr. Coakley?
Yes.
Mrs. Danielson?
Yes.
Ms. Schmidt?
Recuse.
And Mr. Staples?
Yes.
Passes.
D, personnel, who would like to move personnel resolutions?
The personnel section on the agenda is modified to remove item 5, number 1.
Right.
And I would like to move personnel resolutions 1 through 20, excluding that 5,
Okay, do I have a second?
I'll second it, Madam.
Okay, any comments or questions? Okay, roll call.
Mr. Bottero?
Yes, all apply.
Mrs. Champagne?
Yes.
Mr. Coakley?
Yes.
Mrs. Danielson?
yes.
Ms. Schmidt?
Okay, I'll recuse on number 9, it's in exhibit HR 1, number 6, Mr. Chava.
Mr. Staples?
Yes, as amended.
So number 9, item 1 does not pass, so I'll just put it up for December.
I'm also gonna have to check on that bowling coach then. Please use your microphone.
Can you repeat that again?
I may have to check on whether you need 6 appropriate votes for that as well. I'll get back to you.
Is that something Mr. Bottero can vote on?
Yes,
Okay,
but you still only have 6 members, so,
right.
you may have to have that nomination.
Okay, and now we're down to E, executive session. Do I have a motion for executive session? Eddie? Michelle, second? Okay, all in favor? Anybody opposed? Okay, and there are no public comments for non-agenda items? Okay, any board member comments?
I have a couple.
Leah? Oh,
Not really.
okay.
Okay, 2 things. I had the privilege to attend on October 27th at Eisenhower Middle School was the Night of Unity. And it was the kids were just so excited that night. It was, I guess, originally started as Hispanic night, but it's broadened from there. But it was primarily Hispanic heritage. All different countries did representative booths or signs from most of the South American countries, including Argentina. And I had food. People had food in the cafeteria from different countries, kind of like the high five, but more focused on Hispanic. They had the people from the Red Bull soccer team in the gym interacting with the kids, playing 2-on-2, 3-on-3, and the kids were just so excited. And there were other handicrafts and different things they're doing. So thank you to those that take the time. A lot of our staff was there, and my guess is it's on their own time, volunteer to do it. And I want to thank them. That was very nice. And the other event also, I guess it was my month at Eisenhower. Eisenhower invited me as Dr. Radwick mentioned, to their veteran celebration on, because we were closed on Veterans Day, it was on the Wednesday. And I was told I was going to meet with a small group. I was thinking 10 or 12 kids. I went in, I think there had to be like 80 to 100 kids there, I'm not sure. And you heard what some of the questions were. They're very good. Kids were very thoughtful, very respectful. And what I gotta say, this whole group of kids, you hear on the news and different things about discipline problems with our kids after COVID and everything. These kids could have been the model students to disclaim all that and show how, thanks to our teachers and our administration, that when the kids, they can be focused, they can Eisenhower Middle School for those two events. Thank you.
Thank you, Leo. And I have to say, you are always at every event, you know, you are so engaged in this school district. It's just astounding. I mean, you're at every single event, no matter what it is, you're there. So thank you so much for that too.
Well, that's what I told Mr. Miller why I was really replying, I resigned here anyway.
Brian, you had a comment?
I just wanted to, I thought I was gonna forget, but I didn't. I've had a couple board members, from my current district, as well as a couple superintendents and principals reach out to me about the Habitat for Humanity project after seeing the presentation. So I obviously can't speak about it, but I hope you're okay with me giving out the email because they want some more information on that. Cause like I said, literally I think I had a board meeting in my district the day you guys came back, and that was the first thing I heard from 4 different people. They were just so impressed with the work of the students and how great that project was. So not only did it obviously change the life of one lucky family, but it changed the lives of the kids out of all the projects. So I just wanted to make sure you guys understood how meaningful that was to a lot of people. I want to talk about just real quick parent-teacher conferences. I had the opportunity only to meet with obviously my kids' 2 teachers, but just from what I heard, they did a great job of teachers explaining where the kids currently are and where we want them to be. So I just want to make sure the teachers understand that's always a hard couple days and a hard couple nights because you have to have the difficult conversations as well as the positive ones. So just let the staff know that it is appreciated that they take the time to get it done. And last but not least, I'd be remiss if I didn't say this. Thank you for having students do the presentation tonight. I've been asking for it, and you guys thankfully are listening. I know you guys listen, that's what I'm saying. But I just encourage you to continue to do that. So we have a 53.5-minute presentation. If we sneak some kids in there, maybe that will make it a little bit more exciting. I don't know. But
I'll bring my kids.
not yours. Right? So, when you have 3rd graders that are up here able to speak the way they did, it's just something that I don't think people recognize, and oftentimes they think, oh, no, they're only 8, 7, they can't. Yeah. And they did a great job. I was super impressed by how well they spoke. So I just love the fact that we're bringing that stuff in. Again, not to say you didn't do it, but I just love seeing it. So thank you.
Okay. Any other board member comments? Heather?
Couple things. First off, I am excited to hear about the student ambassador who's been translating for some of our new arrivals in the school. I don't know if it is broadly advertised within the district, but the Roxbury Public Library has started conversation partners, which they're offering online as well as in person several nights a week and sometimes evenings on weekends. So perhaps that could be a resource that you connect them with, and it's free of charge, regardless of level. I want to thank Michelle Danielson for her hard work on distinguished alumni. I know the selection is always a process, and getting them to attend is a separate process. But I thought the 2 individuals who were honored were both incredibly gracious when we met with them privately, as well as superior speakers. And I thought, like, just wow, when they presented. My daughter, who can often turn off in presentations like that, was just completely floored at the presentation. So I thought it went rather well. Mr. Miller has already left, so I can't thank him for how nicely the rest of the evening flowed, because he had it in and out like that, which was also great. But great job with that beautiful presentation. And I do want to also thank Delaney. I think a lot of people might have a misperception that you just report on the fun things and the sports things. And your last comment regarding anti-Semitism and concerning the community really speaks to the fact that you have the pulse of the school and you have their interests at heart. So thank you for communicating, you know, what we need to know.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Okay, do I have a motion for adjournment then?
Motion.
Okay, second? Eddie, are you all in favor?